Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Major news affecting two facets of healthcare in America tonight. First, one of the world's biggest drug makers changes in a fundamental way how its products are marketed and ends a decades-long practice in how it compensates its sales force. And second, President Obama, still trying to get the healthcare.gov website working right, calls in tech support, very expensive tech support. He met today at the White House with some A-list executives in technology from Apple, Facebook, and more to get their advice on how to fix that problem-plagued portal.
Well, the big drug maker Tyler just mentioned is GlaxoSmithKline. It's vowing to end payola to doctors who prescribe and promote its products. So how transformational is this change, and what does it mean for Glaxo? Sarah Eisen has the story.
Glaxo is breaking the mold. The British pharma giant is the first to announce it will stop paying doctors to promote drugs. The producer of top-selling medications Paxil and Flonase and consumer products like Tums and Aquafresh is also changing the way it pays its sales representatives. It will no longer tie their compensation to the number of prescriptions doctors write, rolling out globally a program piloted in the U.S. The company says it's been a competitive advantage because healthcare professionals appreciate the transparency. Glaxo's CEO says in a statement the new changes are designed to bring greater clarity and confidence that whenever we talk to a doctor, nurse, or other prescriber, it is patients' interests that always come first.
There are a lot of good reasons that the industry has used physicians as their advocates. When these things are connected with direct payments, that's when you have the introduction of conflict of interest.
But Glaxo may be also trying to repair its reputation. It's the target of an ongoing corruption investigation in China, where the drug maker is accused of bribing hospitals, doctors, and officials. And last year, Glaxo paid a record $3 billion fine in the United States to settle accusations it marketed drugs for unapproved uses. In the past few years, other drug companies, including Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Merck, have paid big fines after being accused of questionable marketing practices. One reason analysts say other companies will follow Glaxo's lead.
Over the next 2 years, I think we're going to see the process by which pharmaceutical companies promote their products through medical education and with the input of physicians will change somewhat.
One big reason, the Affordable Care Act will require drug companies to disclose exactly how much they're paying doctors every year. This could push doctors and pharma companies to accelerate these changes.
Clinical meetings and boondoggles, those have really been cleaned up dramatically over the last, I would say 5 years. And I think the industry is trying to gain the reputation that they should have, which is that they provide tremendous value to society.
Glaxo is taking a big first step. Now pharma watchers are waiting to see which companies will follow. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Sarah Eisen.
Our guest tonight has been very critical of the drug industry's marketing practices over the years. He's Dr. Jerry Avorn, professor of medicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital and at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Avorn, welcome. Good to have you with us. Do you think Glaxo is doing what they're doing because they suddenly got religion or because they got caught?
Well, it's very hard for me to know what their motivations were. I think it is a good step in the right direction in that it's much better for doctors to learn about drugs from some unbiased, non-commercial source of information rather than from a doctor who's being paid by the drug maker to teach them about how good their products are. As to why, hard to know. It's not been a good year for Glaxo, as your report indicated, and maybe they're trying to take the high ground to be in the media for something good that they did instead of something bad that they did.
But Dr. Avorn, isn't it possible also that it just doesn't pay to spend all this money on doctors? Aren't they finding that the business model of marketing has changed, that you can go direct to consumer? We see all these ads on TV now promoting all kinds of drugs. So isn't it more that they can go direct to the consumer?
Well, there's a lot of that going on, and as you know, we are one of only 2 countries on Earth, the other one being New Zealand, that allows direct-to-consumer ads of prescription drugs, and I don't think that's a great step forward, because these are issues that are a little bit too complicated to fit into a 30-second or 1-minute commercial on TV. And to the extent that they're doing that, that may be another way to try to market the drugs. It's probably not the best way to market drugs.
Those ads of prescription drugs are mostly the disclaimers, it seems to me, and less the selling points. How do you have any perspective on how this is likely to affect Glaxo's sales, its revenues?
It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in terms of their sales, because on the one hand, you can probably sell a lot more drug if you completely control the message. If the doctor who's giving the lecture or the continuing education course is being paid by the company, and often, and a lot of people don't know this, the slides and the script and the content of that talk is provided directly by the company as well. And so if you're doing that, you probably can manage to make a better sales pitch than if you are having a doctor who may be independent and is coming to this just as an expert say whatever he or she thinks. That may not be as good for sales, and it'll be interesting to see what effect it has.
Doctor, I understand.
It's better for patients, though. I'm just going to say it's better for patients.
Okay, I was going to ask you that, you've made a career on educating doctors on how best that they can, prescribe medications to their patients. What else would you like to see happen? What other improvements would you like to see happen in terms of transparency and in terms of best practices for patients?
Well, I'd like to see doctors being able to get information about drugs primarily from sources that are not the drug makers. We certainly can afford that, considering what we're paying for drugs in this country, which is way more per capita than any other country. And it would be nice if the kind of work that many groups, including ours, are doing, in which there's folks who are unbiased experts who are able to go out and teach doctors about the evidence behind the drugs without any particular axe to grind. If that was a more widespread practice, instead of having to have doctors rely on company sales reps, whether they are folks who are sales representatives or doctors paid by the company, that's just not the most efficient way for people to learn about what works and what doesn't. So I'm hoping we'll see more of that going forward.
Where do we stand on the question of paid research? In other words, where doctors are paid, where the research is funded by a pharmaceutical company, a medical device company. What is the state of play on that?
Well, I think it's important to make a big distinction between research, the good research that is funded by a company, versus sales or infomercials or dinner events that are funded by a company. We have a model in this country, for better or worse, that a lot of clinical trials are funded by companies. And as long as those trials are well done and rigorous and not set up to get a predetermined result, then that can be a useful contribution. We just need to make sure that those studies are well done and not set up in a way that's just kind of a marketing exercise.
Dr. Jerry Avorn, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Dr.
You're very
Avorn is
welcome.
professor of medicine at Brigham's and Women's Hospital and at the Harvard Medical School.